Chairperson, honorable members, and members of the public, this bill is about ensuring that South Africa is compliant with international requirements and standards, and that we are fully aligned to the regulatory framework for issues around money laundering, financing, terrorism, etc. Financial crime, honorable members, remains a global concern. The recent Panama Papers shed further light into how wealthy individuals dodge tax and launder money. I hope there's none of us on that list. Following the global financial crisis of 2008, the major economies of the world that came together as the G20 met in Toronto and pledged their support for the work of the Financial Action Task Force and encouraged FATF to monitor global compliance with anti-money laundering and combating of financing of terrorism. South Africa, of course, is a member of the G20 and remains bound by that commitment. The consequences, honorable members, of financial crime and related money laundering and similar of such criminal proceeds can have devastating effects on government revenues and their ability to deliver critical services to society. So there's a very direct relationship between illicit financial flows, tax evasion, stealing money from the state, and what people on the ground ultimately benefit or don't benefit as a result of these activities. The ability to easily launder money can compromise both financial and economic stability by introducing both operational and reputational risk for any financial institution, while also compromising the accuracy of macroeconomic statistics and the integrity of our economy. If left unchecked, financial crimes, like any other crime, and illicit financial flows will chip away at the core of our moral values and stability of our society. The consequence of South Africa not updating its laws, as we are doing in this bill, and aligning them with international best practice, will result in major negative implications for South Africa. This could include us being put on a FATF watch list, our financial institutions being sanctioned by supervisors locally and in foreign jurisdictions, and South Africa will struggle undertaking international trade as foreign correspondent banks will refuse facilitating foreign currency transactions on our behalf. All of these could have major implications, as you will understand, for South Africa's economy and therefore employment in our society. It is therefore the responsibility of all of us, both in the public and private sector, to be constantly vigilant in protecting ourselves from being the targets of potential money launderers. If financial institutions or any other relevant institution are seen as easy targets by criminals, both within and outside of our ranks, then they will be abused and misused. Money laundering is a crime, and any concealment of proceeds of financial crime encourages and amounts to collaboration with underlying crimes, whether bribery, poaching of endangered species, drug trafficking, tax evasion, and many other similar crimes. This bill, which was tabled in Parliament last year, seeks to make our regulatory framework on combating financial crime, especially money laundering and terror financing, stronger. The bill adopts best practice as recommended, as I said earlier, and many speakers have said, by the Financial Action Task Force, multilateral institutions like the IMF, and of course the United Nations itself. We, as South Africa, by virtue of the ratification of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption by Parliament in 2004, also subscribed to the anti-corruption campaigns around the world. One of the key recommendations coming from FATF is the need to identify, as has been pointed out, politically exposed persons. Our Cabinet took a bold step in 2015 in its commitment to fight financial crime by approving the current bill, which acknowledges that corruption and bribery have two sides, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And notwithstanding the lack of clarity around the prominent and important persons, I'm sure that in the near future we will reach greater clarity in that area and provide the certainty that is actually required. More recently, the question of beneficial ownership has come to the fore. A week or so ago, there was a conference in London which discussed this issue. In other words, once one looks through all the complex structures that are set up, as Dr. Koza was pointing out, by lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors, who actually owns a particular entity and is the financial beneficiary of the business that that particular entity conducts. And for South Africa, that becomes an important new terrain in which we've got to also comply. But one of the messages we need to send as South Africa to the United Kingdom and similar countries is that they must stop providing protection to tax havens within their jurisdiction. They need to urgently close up those tax havens, those various islands that are called territories of the UK and other countries, so that we can actually do the work that we have to do with greater efficiency and effectiveness. There's a few other points that I want to emphasize that the Honorable Mania, for example, raises. I'm sure that in considering the bill, Honorable Mania, you've actually read the original bill, and you will understand that the director of the FIC, as is the Minister of Finance, is prohibited by the current legislation from indicating, and I don't even know myself, by the way, whether the FIC is investigating person X or person Y. So it's unfair for you to throw the accusation of obfuscation. Nobody's obfuscating. Let me give you the assurance that we will do, and entities that report to me, to the extent I can manage that, will do what is required by the law without fear or favor. And please understand what the constraints of the law are, and kindly help us not to mislead the public about what can be disclosed and can't be disclosed. Secondly, if this entity is to say person X or person Y, or entity A or entity B is being investigated, you're actually warning them to go and hide whatever they need to actually hide. And this, and finally, is what we've answered in the parliamentary question, which will be put on your table today. I want to thank the committee for the extensive consultations that they've undertaken, and I also want to share the concern that some of the honourable members have put on the table that we have few successful prosecutions in this area. Whilst there's a lot of activity in this area that needs the attention of both the investigating agencies and the prosecuting agencies. Some of us might be old enough to remember Springbok Radio and a program called Mark Saxon, and the title of the program was No Place to Hide. And what we need to ensure that in matters like this, there is indeed no place to hide. So let me congratulate Honorable Karim and the members of the committee and the officials of the FIC and the National Treasury for doing an extremely good piece of work, and ask all of you to support this bill. Thank you very much.